record. Just so the recording has the actual session name and title in it. This is where we're going into Nearpod, and here we are in Nearpod. Let's rock and roll. Many of you are probably already familiar with Madeline Hunter. If you haven't already heard a lot about her this week, she came up with this idea in the 1960s, been around for a few decades. As a master's student in instructional technology at San Jose State University, I had my first introduction to Madeline Hunter. And we used it because it was a systematic way to design instruction. And it was a way to teach others how to design instruction. When I became a professor in that particular program, I was teaching master students who were primarily teachers how to understand instructional design and technology. So I used this particular model to help them design their lessons. But I now see it totally differently. So I'm going to talk to you from the way that I now understand it and not the way I had taught it way back then. Well, these are the seven steps? No, those are actually elements. Those would be a fallacy to call these steps, because then it applies, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, and you work through it. And that isn't true at all. This is really fluid. And this presentation will introduce you to each of these 7 elements. I left off closure, and I'll talk about closure when we get there. So think of them as elements, ways to mix and match, and you can recombine or toss things out, because everything is a remix. Lessons that we need to design today. You know, if you are in there teaching online with your students, the thing you did last week that they don't remember and you try to reintroduce it this week totally messes up your lesson plan, because you've got to go, oh, they don't remember, or half of them weren't there. And you need to backtrack and then pull in some new information. That is what we mean by remix. And that's how we can apply this Madeline Hunter model. It isn't rigid, it's flexible. The reason why we use the Madeline Hunter model here within Bold is we're trying to deliver a consistent message. School is not about memorization anymore. The smartest kid in the class got there often because they knew how to memorize stuff. This was a lot of my own experience in school. I did well because I could remember things. Later, I could pass comprehensive exams at the end of a school year because I still could remember stuff from the beginning of the school year. But I was not considered a very creative person at the time. And look where we are today. We have like the 4 C's, creativity being one of those that we want to teach kids. And the way I think about it is, who do I want sitting next to me as a colleague? Who do I want working with me or for me? I want the creative person. I don't want the smartest person in school. I want the one who was the most creative, because they know how to solve problems. While we're working through this whole new realm, our classrooms have changed and our kids are dynamically changing right before our eyes. The way they were in class is not the way that they are now. And the way they're learning is not the way that it was before. We need a lot of creativity, and we need to pump this into our students so that they too can be creative in what we're doing. The reason why I chose to use Nearpod is because I wanted to hear from you. I could talk endlessly about Madeline Hunter, but I want to hear what your ideas are. And I think I just opened up this collaborative space so that you can share with me your ideas and what information you already know about Madeline Hunter. And if you're following along with where I am in the model, you will already know I'm working off the anticipatory set. I'm gauging your prior knowledge. So this is my first time I've ever used Nearpod. I hope this is going to work. Waiting in anticipation of something to appear on the slide.
Perfect. Steve, while you're waiting, there was a fantastic question.
Please tell me.
While you're waiting for everybody to post. So Sylvia asked this fantastic question: why Madeline Hunter? And is there a body of research specific to Madeline Hunter?
You mean other than the book that she wrote that described the 7 steps and then the research that followed on how effective it was? Or the presentation that John and I did with Robin Hunter, her son, that described how administrators had misused her particular work over time and used it as like a beating stick to beat up on teachers because they didn't follow the 7 steps. I only know her, yes. So yes, there is research available. It wasn't just a school teacher who made it up. She was a faculty member at UCLA. in the School of Education. I don't have a bibliography of her work, but I would be glad, now that I'm challenged to answer the question, I will be a good learner and I'm going to go away and find that stuff.
Yes, this is.
I lost you on that one, Nupur. So Nupur blanked out. Who could be my co-moderator? Because I'm looking at this Nearpod and I'm thinking, oh, is it waiting for me to approve all these comments? Look at this, I've got power. Look at y'all. You've been busy typing. I'm thinking this is like Padlet, right? It's just gonna show up.
We're here for you, Steve.
Thanks, man. Always need a cheering crew. Because I can only see like six videos at one time, so I don't know who my support person is in the audience that I normally would stare at. Okay, thank you so much. Look at this. Lots of participation. I kind of like the way that the little Post-it notes are a little bit at an angle. It helps my graphic design sense to know that things don't have to be perfectly square. So this is what your knowledge and understanding about Madeline Hunter is about. And I love Nicole. Awesome. First time you've ever heard of her. Terrific. Glad to introduce her. Les says, my introduction to Madeline Hunter provided a structure to how to design a lesson plan from start to finish, which is basically what she has done. So thank you very much for that. And yes, 7 Elements, 30 years ago. Nice. Appreciate your comments and your reflections on that. Wait. Oh, see, there's one more. It's quite a history. Well, let's dive in. With that little bit, you know something. Some of you have never really heard of her until this conference. Let's see if we can't move your knowledge a little bit further along this path. The anticipatory set is the first step. This is the hook. This is where we capture students' attention. And I put in these questions to help you think about what does it mean when we're working within the anticipatory set. It's how do you activate that student's prior knowledge and focus their attention? The old way was, let's say we're teaching the parts of speech. So you do nouns one week, you do verbs the next week, then you do adjectives, then you do adverbs. You learn them in these sort of isolated little silos. Oh, the fact that we even learn mathematics in one class and then we learn science in another class and English and language arts in another separates things in a way that may not be the best. The new way is to lead students into a little bit of wonder, to get them thinking across the dimensions of their learning and getting and allowing them to open up the possibilities that what you do in mathematics may actually have some relevance in other areas, that what happens in ELA may have relevance in another area. And then if you think about it fluidly, you're always prepared to bring your students in and then say, well, that's a great question. I wonder how we're going to answer that, like the one that I tried to field earlier. So if we were in class, I would have said to the person who asked the question, right now, do the Google search, do scholar.google.com, and then tell me what the answers are. Here in this session, we'll skip past that for a moment. When you get through the anticipatory set, and this works for adult learning as well, you always want to start with an opening line. You want a hook, a joke, a story, something, a video. Videos are great. Lisa Highfield talks about using videos in her opening lessons all the time. Great way to get students focused. Once you have their attention, that's when you want to hit them with, this is why we're here. What are they going to do or know how to do by the time they get to the end of the lesson? Now you have two ways of kind of approaching this. Do you want them to know what is the major, what is the instructional objective that you're trying to accomplish? Or do you want to continue to kind of tease them about sort of a transformed way of thinking about something that's going to occur later without even referencing the standard? So there is an old way. You've seen this on a whiteboard. You have to write the objective and then what you expect that students are going to do. But the new way, why don't you start them off with a frere or start them off with an opening question that says, what do you already know? So that would be a KWL chart. I just asked you the know. What do you want to know? What do you already know about what we are learning in Madeline Hunter? But frares work great as an opening. Oh, have students work together on a frere. and let them get involved in the conversation and the activity. This reduces the amount of talking that you do and increases the amount of work that the students are doing. Indeed. Let me pull you into the conversation now that I'm becoming the master of Nearpod. So here we are in a distance learning context. We've talked about an anticipatory set and how do you deliver the objective and the purpose to your students. You can do them separately or you can combine them. So how would you do any one of these two elements using tools, distance learning tools or resources? I alluded to a few, but maybe you have some that you would like to share with us. And I'm going to be rocking and rolling on the approvals now that I can like see all of the pending posts as they come up. Thank you, Valerie. Valerie, you should know that your video is one that's right in front of me. I see you all the time. I see some more. Roxy, thank you, Roxy. Valerie's got two. Kelly, showing videos in a personal story. Oh, Jessica on the Ed Puzzle. Nice. Short videos. Ed Puzzle works on the short video thing. Les, you are on the GIM kit. That is terrific. Thank you, Valerie, for adding Socrative. YouTube videos. Images are a great way to introduce this. Have students go into a brainstorming session. Thank you, Kelly, for quizzes. How would you facilitate the brainstorming? Would you be live? Well, let's imagine that it's asynchronous so that you're not dynamically speaking with your students and you're trying to get them engaged in a learning experience that's going to transpire. Do you use, if you want to use discussion, it's going to go like ping pong, goes over there first and then pops back and then back and forth. Do you have other ideas that Nearpod, who thought of Nearpod? What the heck? What an idea. Works great when you are in a dynamic session like this and we're rocking and rolling at the same time. Gets a little bit more complex when it goes asynchronously. And then, so Padlet can work well in an asynchronous environment. Nearpod can be set up that it can run so that students can go through it at their own pace as well. So these are some great ideas for how you can combine an anticipatory set along with explaining the purpose of the lesson so that students grasp something interesting and where they're going to go by the time they get to the end of the lesson. I see one more popped in. Don't want to miss it. Thank you, Maria. Pear Deck, yes. Pear Deck is awesome for that as well. I'm going to go ahead and advance and take a look at the input section. Now, please keep in mind, I'm speaking about this linearly, but it doesn't have to be that way. We can use input along with something else as we go along. The input part is interesting. Students need something to work with. You need to stimulate their thinking with ideas and information. Maybe you start with facts. In the old days, I can't say the old days because I know some teachers are still doing lecture and worksheets. I'm an active learning person. This session is a little, I'm trying to put as much interactivity into it as I can. But the input is, what do I need to tell you? And how do I lead you through, rather than listening to me tell, how do I get you to be involved in it? So let's forget the old way for a moment. Let's forget that we already know how to write on a chalkboard or a whiteboard. Now we know how to give worksheets. Here is a couple suggestions. If you know about EduProtocols, you know that you can run an Iron Chef to give students, to get students to dig up some information on a content area. But there are many other ways. You can do rolling notes or do short time frames of work and just have them figure things out in short segments. Pull out the lecture, let them explore content area. Hyperdocs are a fantastic way for students to explore. Then you're using UDL principles as well to allow them some choice about what to explore. Then you ask them to give you that information back, which would be what? A check for understanding. You know that in the old way, the master in the front of the room tends to have control over the loudness of the room and the attention spans of the students. I encourage you to let it get loud and let it get messy. Walk around the room, check and see what students are doing. to help keep them on task when you're with them. When you're not with them, then you've got to be in those little online places, whether you're in Seesaw or whether or not you are using some other kind of learning management system, Google Classroom. Keep checking on them and seeing what it is that they're doing. Newper, I need a little help. Somebody's got their microphone on and they're typing on a keyboard. And I know it wasn't me, though I type a lot. Thank you.
Oh,
Is that you, Newper? What?
It was me.
What?
It was me.
My moderator.
I'm like randomly people are asking.
You're answering the questions in
oh,
chat.
Is this not what my job's supposed to be?
Oh, no. Go ahead.
Yes.
Go ahead.
People are just
now that I have the input that
passionately asking questions about Nearpod and Nearpod.
Thank you, Newper, for doing your job so well.
So,
now that I know where all that typing is coming from, I know you're on the job. Let me focus on modeling for a moment. So thank you for that. Thank you for the little interjection. As we move from input, so now you've shared a lot of information with your students. Students are sitting there going, gee, what do I do with this? Perfect question. There's an opportunity for you to step in and begin modeling. What is it that you expect them to do with that information? If they're building an Iron Chef, if they're building a thin slide, if you ask them to write a report, if you ask them to make a video, if you want them to create a play, what do you want this thing to look like? Start modeling the very character or what the artifacts are going to look like as you expect students to do it. You can, of course, you would have to do modeling consistently if you keep introducing new ideas for them to work on. But how do you want them to demonstrate their skill and their competence? It has to start with you, either by tone, attitude, but maybe you need to show them. And it could be past work. You can use work from students that have done this in the past and then show and explain. This is the part where you do, or we do we do it together and then you do it to show them and then you can flip back and forth between that. Better yet, why not have one of the students model for the other students what your expectations are and raise the DOK level instantly for that and have them teach the other students in the class. That would be one way that you can raise modeling to a higher level, pull you back into the master of the classroom and say, yeah, you teach today, and I'll check you for your understanding. So Newper, I pause every once in a while and I engage everyone in an activity, but why don't I pause here and find out, is there something going on in the chat that I should pay attention to? Is there a question? Do I need to talk slower? Do I need to talk faster?
Well, we're having great conversation comparing Nearpod and Pear Deck. So people are chiming in, talk about the feature.
This is classic. So if I were, hey Lester, Steve, what you got, man?
Well, Newper, she kind of cut out, but I was just wondering, how are we going to get kids to cluster? Now, in your diagram here on the Nearpod, you've got the kids up. I've done that. I know other teachers have done that, but in the COVID-19 world, we don't really know what school's going to look like. Everyone's going to probably approach this differently.
Yes.
And I forgot, I think it was guest teacher that said we got to figure out how to have them cluster together digitally.
Okay.
So working together, because rows were bad and now rows may have to be what we go back to.
Oh,
so you're changing idea of where we're going to be. That's it.
Okay. Wow. Just as you were asking the question, 6 different ideas rolled through my head, and this is the one I'm going to land on and share back with you. Even if given an opportunity to go back into your learning spaces with students, even if they are sitting in rows, I say it's always still blended learning. You cannot ignore the fact that they can interact 6 feet away from each other in a shared space. Now they can actually talk to each other, but some of the interaction may still be through collaborative spaces. Now let me address collaborative spaces. My wife, the 5th grade teacher, is able to work with students in Zoom. However, she cannot, you cannot put 2 students into a Zoom breakout room by themselves. So it's going to require an adult to be present, and that's not possible when there's 1 teacher in 5 Zoom rooms. However, students can collaborate with one another through text messaging, through a shared document. Google Docs as an example. Yes. I'll pause for a moment. Was there a question? Technology slows us down sometimes. But hopefully that helps answer a little bit what Les is asking about. I don't know all the features of how Nearpod could allow for that kind of interaction, because when I found the one thing I wanted Nearpod to do, I stuck to it and didn't pay attention to all the other tools that it had. These conferences can be overwhelming. There's so much technology. I had to practice something by focusing on one thing. First, it was Nearpod, and then the one thing that Nearpod could do for me that I needed done. And I had to ignore all the other features, or I would still be in there learning it. We wouldn't be in the session. So with that,
Steve, can I just?
Yes.
Can I add something, Steve? So
Please.
Nearpod has another feature called Draw an Activity, where, so the clustering that you see right now through Maps 360, you can do that on Draw Activity, and you already saw what Steve was showing you, the collaborative board, and my kids interact through this all the time.
Awesome.
But yeah.
The beauty of what Newport just did is she's a friend and she's a colleague, and she had more extensive information and was able to add that to our conversation. This is why we're better together. This is why we are Q. That's what that whole little hashtag means. And the value of having a moderator and a co-collaborator is incredibly valuable. If Steve were king of the world, my schools in my world would always have 2 actively engaged teacher quality people in the space. Always. Students need that kind of attention. They need someone who's upfront doing something and someone else who could really carefully monitor what's going on in the back of the room, or online in that case. But let me put my king soapbox on the, I'll put it away and I'll move forward in the presentation. Checking for understanding. Let me pause there and simply say, every time we did an activity, that was checking for understanding. Stopping and pausing and asking questions right now from you, that was checking for understanding. I'm also scanning the video stream, and most of you are not sharing your video, so I don't have the advantage of seeing your faces, and that's okay. I do know your names, and I could call on you if I wanted to draw you out and have you interact, and that could be another way of checking for understanding, though it puts somebody on the hot spot, and that's not always so cool. So in essence, I just referenced using Zoom just like I might use equity sticks, didn't I? Did you catch that? You see my equity sticks over there under the old way? Or I can ask you to do thumbs up or thumbs down. It serves a certain purpose, but it's not all inclusive. I've been hanging out in Q intensely for the last 4 years, and Carippo's presentations always include a quote, often include a quote from a guy named Sam Patterson, who'd been a part of our group for many years. Sam Patterson has a quote, says, "Put your hands down, I'm calling on everybody." And that's what Kahoot and Quizzes does. It brings everybody into the mix. It brings everybody into the experience. Every kid, every student gets the chance to answer a question. And in fact, the way that Quizzes and Kahoot work, you can show those student answers back to the entire class. That kind of forces the level of participation. Students are always knowing that they're going to be called upon, particularly if you follow EduProtocol kinds of practices and you repeat, you do reps. They know they will always get called upon. So Quizzes and Kahoots is a great way to check for understanding. Socrative, open-ended questions, fantastic. Throw up a Socrative question and it doesn't say anything. You just get students in the space and they're staring at you. And you might have seen many people who have done this with Socrative. They wait until everybody's paying attention and then they ask the question. Well, where was the question? It was in the instructor's head. They're making it up just to gauge understanding as they're going along. Dynamically, in the spot, while the learning is happening. If we have to do this asynchronously, the tools can still work for that purpose. By the way, the equity stick thing, I won't say anymore. Moving on. Look, we've got an opportunity to collaborate. I get to check for understanding. So in this distance learning context, which tools and techniques do you use to check for understanding? And thinking about it, if you're synchronous and live versus if you're asynchronous, how do you know that students are learning? How do you know that they're getting it? How do you know when they're totally confused? And there are many, many ways, both technological, like computer-based, but there might be some non-computer-based ways that you can check for understanding. So tell me what you think. And we'll spend about a minute or two. I'll start populating the screen. So if you're using Nearpod, by the way, I'm screening all the answers before I post them up. So if a student were to write something that you don't want others to see, you can guard against that. It doesn't move as fast or as fluidly as I would like, but you know, it works. And I love, someone just wrote they love Padlet. We've got lots of Padlets and quizzes going here. There's a very practical thing. Observe the students' work. Take a look at the artifacts of what they are doing. Absolutely. So as teachers, to check for understanding, sometimes it means, why don't you look at the students' work? What are they, you know, what are they turning in and to what quality? Having been exposed to many teachers over the last 4 or 5 years who give out worksheets, and I mean worksheets, and then just put a stamp on it that it was done when it was turned in. What good is that? Censors are going to get me, I'm sure.
Steve, I can't type on the board. It's kind of grayed out for me.
Interesting. Does anyone know Nearpod well enough to know why it would block somebody from adding something to the board? Oh, refresh the screen. Oh,
yeah, maybe, yeah, try that.
Valerie and I were playing charades.
Thanks, Valerie.
So she's in this window over here next to me. I don't know where she is in your window scheme, but she's on my right hand here. That's awesome. I've got you going now, don't I? Now that I know your name and I can see you. Let's see, one more. So many great ideas are here. Yes. And look, someone figured out how to put a graphic inside one of these. Oh, MJ and Eileen, thank you. Appreciate you testing out the tools. Let me check my time. Oh, gotta move. Thank you very much for your participation in that exercise of checking for your understanding. At some point, you need to let your students loose so that they can go figure out and work with the information that you've now given them. So you could either guide their practice or you can do independent practice, which is another one of the elements. Let me just focus on breaking these apart. In guided practice, you're there with them. What is it that you're going to invite them to do so that you can see that they're doing okay? And one of the suggestions and one of the methodologies that I know my wife uses, Gloria, are you in this session with me? So if you see Gloria McGriff in the session, that's who I'm talking about. She is a rockin' awesome 5th grade teacher. And she hates it when people bring attention to her. So I did it deliberately because she messed with me in my session yesterday. So coaching while walking around. You know, she gets in 13,000 steps in her 5th grade classroom on a given workday because she's walking. She's walking the whole room. She is at every kid's desk and she is constantly in motion. I don't even know why she has a desk in her room. So she uses this as a way for modeling what she wants students to do. She's checking for understanding as she's guiding them through the practice. And she might break students up into groups, and many of you probably do this as well, and then checks to see how the other groups are doing. Another nice thing you can do in guided practice is you can always get another student who knows what they're doing to tell the student who doesn't know what they're doing how to get it done. So use the force of your students to help each student accomplish the work while you just float and coach. Coaching by walking around. And always be sure to challenge your students' perceptions of what they think they are supposed to be doing and how well they're doing it. You know, raise their level of awareness of quality while you're doing that. It's just a coach thing. If you take a look at this slide, the shut up sheets are the old way of doing this, but the new way is what we were just describing. As you can see, the teacher is in the classroom with the students. She is leaning over, she is making eye contact, close proximity, and while we might not be able to do that going towards the future, you get the idea and you're creative enough to figure out how do you capture a student's attention from 6 feet away. Certainly staring at them is one way to do it, but you will find many other new techniques to make that work. Remember, everything is about a remix. Our whole returning to school in a couple months is going to be different. We need to be creative and flexible in making that happen. Independent practice is the seventh element. If you didn't notice, the numbers of the elements are in the top right-hand corner. And this would be the seventh one, which you're cluing in. If there were 8 elements, I'm close to the end because you're keeping track with me. So independent practice could be combined with guided practice. But think about it, independent practice as, what did we used to call it? Homework, or work that you do at home, or work that you do on your own. It's time for students to flex their creativity. In the old days, you might like send home the math book and say, could you do all the odd number problems for this chapter? They're in the back of the book. Or give them worksheets. That's what they're called. What about those daily reading logs? I remember those reading logs because I've had 3 sons go through elementary school and they were keeping track of their reading logs. Heck, being who I am, I looked at my son's reading log from his 5th grade teacher and I said, I could turn this into a Google worksheet. I could spreadsheet this bad boy. You tell me how many pages you read and I know how many pages are in the book and I'll create the running tally on how many pages you got left. And then I'll put the column in so you can see. I geeked out. Independent practice. What will you have them do and how will you have them do it?
Steve, can you enlarge your screen a little, please?
Oh, did that shrink when I did that?
Steve, can you enlarge? Yes, thank you. It did shrink a little, just a wee bit.
I did, because I kept trying to get all your faces onto my screen so I could see you all while I was talking. Sorry. Thanks for the heads up.
Thank you.
So that was the old way and the new way. One more comment about the 7th element. How do you even know? How are you going to know when it's time to set them free to go work on their own? You need to reach that point where either I just don't have any more words to share with you, and you need to let them loose. Or you say, I've said everything you need to know. Now it's time for you to go figure out the rest. And be sure to be open to those questions, because in a way that's them checking for understanding from you. That's how you'll know what you can do with your students when they're doing this in a independent way. If you look at the bottom of the slides, you can get the actual real Google slide deck that I created. So then you can see how clever these are 2 GIF images that are not being animated because Nearpod doesn't allow for that. Well, wait, let me finish this up and then I'll show you what that deck looks like, because I wrote notes to you personally. I wrote presenter notes that you can use. One of the keys to the independent practice, which is if you know anything about sports or learning a physical skill, actually anything, if you learn to play music, it was the repetitions. Yo-Yo Ma said, followed up on the principle from Malcolm Gladwell, I believe, who said it takes 10,000 hours to become a master at something. When Yo-Yo Ma reached those 10,000 hours, he kind of took a note of where his skill level was, and he's gone on and hit other 10,000 hour milestones in his perfection of the cello. I don't know if there's anyone who plays the cello more masterfully than Yo-Yo Ma. So repetitions are important. Oh, wait, was there a reference back there? Hold on a second. You got to give a hand to John Crippo and Marlena Hepburn for Edu Protocols, which is a fantastic way of leading students into doing work that's fun, but still repetitive in terms of the repetitions of learning how to learn and repetition for content. In the interest of time, because we're at the 40-minute mark, I'm going to skip this, this particular interactive question, though you could add this to the chat if you would like. The question is basically, how would you monitor students' progress in distant learning? checking their work was one of the answers. So I'm going to move you from Nearpod out to the chat to answer that question. What do you do to monitor student progress in distant learning? I think I could be clever knowing what the rest of my slides are. While you're answering that question, I am going to go back to our presentation to where I left off. And hopefully I didn't lose anyone in the process. So Nupur, is it true that I'm now projecting from my bold slide deck?
Yes, you are, and yeah, and everybody still be there on Nearpod.
Yes. Yes, you can keep Nearpod open.
Do we have to take care of time?
Do
we have to worry about time? There's this room being shared, so I can keep. You good?
The Zoom room? Yes, because there'll be a 7 o'clock session.
Yeah, I was just wondering. Okay.
Yes.
Okay,
awesome.
So we're at 6:41. I just wanted to let you know that.
Thank you. So while you're answering that question about the tools and techniques you would use in distance learning, let me make reference to the 8th step of, I keep forgetting. How come presenters don't really, use presenter mode when they're inside a Google slide deck? I don't know. I'll try it. Madeline did not like this 8th element. She was asked to put it in after she came up with the original 7 by faculty colleagues who said, Madeline, you need to bring the lesson to a close. And she says, no, I don't, because the learning is supposed to keep going. Now, people, come on now. There's 2 things going on here. She was objecting to the idea that there was closure. She didn't like it because some people were already misusing the way her model was working and not being flexible. Closure is just bring the lesson to a point at which your students can transition to the next level of learning. So I just call it's a transition point. Let them reflect and give them inspiration for how they can continue with their own learning experience. So while closure is here, and it becomes important to summarize, learning never stops. Education never stops. And we don't want our students to believe that just because we finish that lesson, that the learning stops there as well. It goes on and it goes on. So doing a wrap up is always helpful, doing a review, but really I encourage you to give them inspiration for what they need to do later. Here's a few ideas to keep in mind from our time together. Remember I said everything is a remix. So all of these parts and pieces could be, all the elements could be combined in different ways, some of which you named so well in our Nearpod collaborative board space. There are some criticisms for the Madeline Hunter model. It was designed for one teacher talking to many people, but it doesn't have to be. It was not specifically designed for PBL, but you're all clever. You would know how to introduce project-based learning into a Madeline Hunter lesson. It was organized around the idea that after the lesson, you would take a test. And we now know that there are many other ways in which we can evaluate how students learn without finishing a lesson and then taking a test. We can certainly add technology tools that we've just described in all of our chats and interactions. This would be my last checking for understanding slide. Let's just imagine you can keep asking questions, live or dynamic. Let me say thank you. My name is Steve McGriff. It's been wonderful to be your maestro today and your chief instructional designer. You can find me in various places online. It's been my privilege to work with Q and to develop some of the QCraft Edu protocols. And my friends, for those of you who need that proof of attendance, you can find the Frayer form. The Frayer form looks like that. I, of course, the graphic design guy, had to redesign the Frayer form I was given to make it look more like Steve would have done this. And you can then submit it to where it says, submit your Frayer here. So with that, our after party will be very short, but I love that little screen. Let me, So let me stop the share, come back to all of your faces or names as they were. I give kudos to my friend Valerie, who's over there right now, because she random choice by Zoom. She got to be, the person right next to me that I could check for understanding consistently as we went through. So Nearpod, are there questions that I can answer?
No, they've been fantastic.
Did I talk too fast? It's okay. Feeling self-conscious.
No, you were fantastic. You were like, boom, right on time. And
hey, Steve, if I don't understand it, I'll just catch you at the Q, Nevada.
Les is reminding me of two things. I will be in the public sphere once again in the future, but hey, free lifetime support. Hey, if Carippo can do it, McGriff can do it too. He told me no one ever really takes him up on it. So then if you have a question about things that I've said, want clarification, if you want that bibliography of Madeline Hunter, mcgriffsteven@gmail.com. You can find me on the social media places as usually I'm Steve McGriff. And just write me. Say, hey, we were in a Zoom session together at Madeline Hunter. Could you elaborate on this? Where's that resource?
we have a question. We have a question.
What? Where?
We have a question from Roxy. I hope I'm saying your name correctly. How does Madeline Hunter compare to the 5E model?
Yes! Yes! It's a hyperdoc.
You love that question?
Oh, you gotta be kidding me. I built a new hyperdoc based on Madeline Hunter because I saw the 5E hyperdoc. I'm so excited you asked that question. So let me calm down for a minute. My household is wondering what happened to Dad. It matches beautifully. So I saw the 5E hyperdoc and I said, wait, this looks like a Madeline Hunter. So I redid the thing. I did a hyperdoc as a Madeline Hunter with the explanations. I wonder if I provided it as a resource in my deck. Maybe not.
Yes, I was about to say that. I was about to say that.
So Roxy, you got my email address. Hit me up and I'll send it to you. If you didn't guess, by the way, I love teaching. I miss being in the classroom with my master's students. They would ask questions like that, and if I had an answer in my back pocket, I would jump up and down. I've even been known to jump up on top of the desk and do Gollum impressions. Anticipatory set, got to do a hook somewhere. We're hitting about 6:48. I want to make sure that I am courteous to the next person who needs the room, because I could tell you my heart rate went up when it was 3 minutes before 6 and I did not have my room space. So my friends, thank you Nearpod, for putting my email address in there. Reach back out. I'll be glad to clarify. Find me on Twitter. Thank you for being an awesome audience and for rocking my Friday night. Love being in the party with you all here. Genuinely, Valerie, you let me pick on you. I really appreciate it. Are we friends on Twitter? Are we connected there yet? She doesn't know. Okay. I will correct that. Nearpod, awesome. Thank you for being my partner. She volunteered to help me, by the way. I whined and whimpered and she felt sorry for me. She said, I'll help you in your session, Steve.
No, it's your honor. I hope I was gently typing the second time. Like, it was whisper typing.
She eased up on the pounding on the keyboard, didn't she, folks?
I get excited. See, just they were like Nearpod, and I'm like, okay, quick.
Nice. Thank you for answering those questions. Exactly. Handling the back channel really well.
Thank you.
Any other last questions before I jump out and end the session?